will be recording it now. Okay. So I'm recording the session just to make sure that we can actually tap into it. So coming back to the context of this project or of this sort of intellectual direction, because of Andrew's conceptualization, his use of technology was interesting. And that's why he was recognized in Australia and then later on in the US. But making that step forward and going beyond technology and actually understanding the frameworks of the concepts that resulted in those interesting uses of technology was just too difficult for the old guard of the pedagogy of second language teaching in Australia, right? So what we're doing today is sharing with you some of that tradition and making a few steps forward, because obviously we're not gonna sit forever in the same insaneness. We're just gonna push things forward. So I want you to also see this class today or this meeting today as an intellectual development, because who knows, maybe you will take this approach 1 centimeter forward. It's 5 of us here or 6. That's 6 centimeters altogether. And then another person and another person. So progress doesn't happen necessarily with one big swoop of change, but just gradually as we are having discussions. So I'm extremely nervous today. And that's because it's been a while since I taught this particular approach. That's because I do many things. I don't do just one thing. So I've written a paper and I've submitted it for publication to a Category 1 journal. And I'm not sure whether Mr. Lala or Dr. Lala has actually sent it to you. First, I asked him not to, but I think that after this workshop, Lala, I'm very happy for everyone to read it. Now, remember, it is copyright. It is it's been submitted for publication. I've already found one typo in it, so that's something which we need changing. Okay, so let me take you through it, and it will be really awkward and it will be crooked and it will not be very beautiful. I've prepared this PowerPoint today, but hopefully we will get somewhere with it today. Now, why are we talking emotion? I'm not sure how to introduce this topic today. So I'll just leave for this very second the concept of emotion, and you will read up in the paper a little bit about it, and I will introduce it a little bit like in 10 minutes or in 15 minutes. At this very moment, maybe I'll just go slide by slide to just draw you into the topic. So obviously I live in what is called the Western culture. So in that sort of environment, we are very much used to the fact that when I have colleagues with me in a professional setting, they open their mouths. But as soon as I give a consultancy in Asia, everybody is quiet, as if it. So I would prefer that we would have a discussion, because from this discussion, I'll also learn something from you. And you may think that I am a big professor and you are just little nobody and I can never learn anything from you, which is absolutely incorrect. I have run consultancies on this method in Vietnam with students, master's students. And it was amazing what discussions have actually created. I learned a lot. And now, if I ever publish bits and pieces based on those consultancies, I will include all kinds of insights that emerge from the discussion, which I did not see myself. And this is the point of a discussion. So notice now, I am emphasizing sharing of minds. So when you hear about something like a learner-centered approach, right, to teaching, you've heard it. It's very useful when you think to yourselves, why the heck people talk about learner-centered? What's the core of it? What's the core of it? Right? You may want to answer to yourselves. And I'm not saying that I will give you the answer, but certainly one aspect of learner-centeredness will be what's in someone else's head. Because the opposite to learner-centeredness might be something like teacher-centered or theory-centered. And when it is centered towards something else than the student, then what's in the student mind, it doesn't matter. Right? So now digging things out of a student is irrelevant because theory knows everything or teacher knows everything. Right? And you can straight away see that if you think the teacher knows everything or enough, or the theory knows everything or enough, there is something not humble about it. There is something reductionist about it. Right? Not engaging student in their own learning. There's something crazy about it. That's why it doesn't matter how many approaches and how many traditions are out there and want to disconnect themselves from the concept of learner-centeredness, clearly they can't just drop it because there's something unhealthy about it. Clearly engagement of students' experiences is important. And this is why I'm trying to have a discussion with you so that we have that learner-centeredness, so that I can actually hear what's in your head and we can see how we can work together with it. Not necessarily how I can actually make you think my way, but how you can engage in the discussion yourself. So it's a crazy question to ask you what's a text, but that was the question, unfortunately for me, with which I started my doctoral thesis when I was 29. Long time ago. I didn't want to answer this question. I knew everything about grammar. I've written a beautiful master's and honors thesis. I've written both. And I did very well without that question. Really well. But I did other things really well. I taught German without video. What did I need the video for? Why? I ask myself, why do my students need to see real German people speaking when they can just hear me? So, as you go through your education, at each point of exit, you end up with ideas. And some of them, they seem to you so clear. And then you meet someone else, like I met Professor Lyon, and he said to me, why don't you just use video in your teaching of German? And I'm thinking, he's nuts. What do I need a video for? Now, you are looking at the whole thing now with your 21st century eyes, and you think, was she crazy or something? Didn't use the video in class? Well, I come from the tradition of textbooks. We were doing textbooks. I was making students memorize textbooks. Why would I want them why would I want my students to see real people speaking? I mean, I'm real. So the same with the concept of text. I did very well, written 2 theses, got high distinctions, first class honors, every accolade you can imagine was attributed to me. It was great. And I never had to answer this question. And then when I was writing my PhD, I met people who asked me, what is text? And I thought, what do I care? So, what is text, guys? What's your thinking? What's your tradition? Have you thought about it ever? Or were you just like me? Who cares?
Yeah, Miss Anya, maybe I never really think about what is a text before you ask me the questions. Here.
That didn't come across very well. Did you say you didn't think about it?
Yes, I didn't think about the text before you asked me these questions. But when you asked me these questions, I started to think about what is a text, and maybe in my mind, a text is something that we can deliver our idea or our message, and then something that we use to communicate. So that is what is a text in my mind.
Okay, so I'm sorry, I'm recording this, but unfortunately, I have to sort of to make my point. I will.
Oh yes.
Okay, so I'll continue with this thought, but I will continue on your point. Is it Aussie? I will continue with your point, but I will just ask some other people. What did you think? What is text?
Good morning, Miss Anya. I'm Luru, and actually, similar to Miss Ossie's answer, before you ask the question, I don't really, pay attention to what text is, but rather receive it from the textbook, the theory, and in my opinion, text is probably the same with some of my friends. Oral or written of ideas put in online or offline tools, something like that. Thank you.
Thank you. And Nana, any ideas? Unmute, unmute. We can't hear you. Nana, we can't hear you. I can't hear you, Nana. All right. So we can't hear Nana. So who else is here we can ask? Emma?
Yeah, thank you. Well, in my opinion, a text is a media that can deliver information, whether it's the what is it the kind of text of the type of text is not just a text that form from words, but also the pictures or sign that can deliver information. That's a text for me.
Okay, so let me now summarize some things we did today so far. So each of us, right? What was shared in this discussion we just had? What was shared? Each of us was talking about on the subject of text, right? We spoke on the subject of text. So that was the problem we were addressing, right? Great. What else happened? Remember how we were saying that there is a difference between the British way of starting a workshop, the Polish way of starting the workshop, and then who knows? The more east you go, the less Polish there is. So you didn't say, when you spoke to me, you said, okay, so we're talking about the problem. You have it in your mind. I will now address the question of what text is. Good morning, Anya. Before I didn't think about it. I am thinking the following. You did not say the following. You stupid woman, stop asking me crazy question. Everybody knows what's a text. It's words and grammar, and go home if that's what this workshop is to be about. Why didn't you say that? Maybe because you don't think that I'm a stupid woman, or maybe because you didn't want to insult me. Because you just want to have a peaceful 1.5 hours, and then you have a coffee and forget about it. Either way, whatever your intentions were, you were very pleasant towards me. So your message to me, and you probably have degrees, right? You at least have a master degree. You didn't say, Anya, you are a genius. These teachers we had before must have been stupid. They've never asked us this question. I'm blaming them. They must be idiots. You didn't blame your teachers either. You just said you didn't think about it. You took the blame. A lot of emotional politicizing was happening in your head. Do you see what I'm saying? On the one hand, we were all addressing the same problem, which means the text that each of you produced revolved around the problem, which is, have I thought about what a text, how to define a text, right? So that was the problem. We all talked about that. But we also, all of you decided to talk about it in a polite, neutral way, blaming yourselves. In a way, you blamed yourself. I haven't done it. I haven't thought about it. Which implied is, I probably should have. That's not a bad question to ask, right? If you want to love another human being, you might as well understand what another human being is. And so that you can actually love a human being as opposed to a tree, right? So you kind of have a concept. So two things happened. What was shared? The problem was each of our texts revolved around the problem and around the emotion, which was I don't want to call it blame. What can we call it better? Self-deprecation.
Not self-awareness?
Yes, self-deprecation, my fault. I should have thought about it. I didn't really. That's a very interesting concept. Maybe it will take me somewhere. I don't know. Yeah. And also politeness. Right? So you didn't just say, I don't know, go home, leave me alone. You had options and you chose a way. So the reason why I'm looking at it from a text from the perspective of emotions is not just from the perspective of emotions, because I am suggesting, based on research, which you will read about very shortly, just half a page, is as you communicate, you make choices. Your words are not just grammatically correct. They also, and more so, communicate an emotion to a person. I want you to like me. I want you to see that I'm open. I want you to see that I am not stupid. I want you, right? So there is this, so we don't choose words. Why does it like this word? Right? We don't use words accidentally or because we have some database of how to respond, because there are many options available. And if you're arguing with someone, after a while you lose it and you choose those words options. We all do, but try not to. So we now have identified two things that, at least so far, the texts revolve around problems, and the way we frame or make choices of words depend on the emotion we want to communicate. That's very interesting. And this is where I got here, 2015. I can't remember how long ago, some time ago. And I thought to myself, what do I do with that? Right? So I realized that there is such a thing, like we communicate, we make choices based on the emotion we want to communicate to a person. I want you to like me. I want you to hate me. I want you to blah blah. So depending on the emotion I want to evoke or elicit in the audience, I will choose different words. Obvious. Now, it's a big topic. I told you I will not be very good today at it because it's such a big topic, especially after I've written the paper, that I have a lot of things at once in my head. But let's move to the next slide. It might actually help us, maybe. So now we're a little bit closer to think about things like discourse analysis or text analysis, right? So you've heard about the concept of discourse analysis. You've heard about the concept of text analysis. So the reason why people have theorized methods for text analysis is exactly because to make particular things or particular relationships in text clear. So I just did that in the earlier slide. I made it clear to you by analyzing your structure of your responses to me. I showed you were polite. You showed yourself open to discussion. And you were self-deprecating. You said, I didn't think about it. I never thought of what text is. Right? You didn't say, my teacher never taught me. It's a nice move, right? So you don't blame others, because at the end of the day, you are in control of your professional destiny, right? So sure, your teachers never probably raised that issue, just like they didn't raise it with me until I started doing a PhD and started meeting other people than my regular disciplinary mentors. I went outside my discipline, not far. I went to French semiotics with the help of Andrew. I met the professor of semiotics, and she said to me, "What's a text?" I looked at her. I was 29. I'm thinking, like, text is text. Oh, stupid. Doesn't she know? Now, I was also up myself. I used to thought I was a genius. So it didn't worry me that I knew something she didn't. I know what's a text. Everybody knows. Must be something wrong with her. So that's the what do they call it? The right of the young person is to err, right? To make mistakes, and sometimes to think of themselves too much. That's a young person's attitude. The less you know, the smarter you think you are. All right, so we've discussed it, right? We analyze text from different perspectives for different things to emerge, right? You can analyze grammar. You can analyze whatever aspect you want to focus on text, how many adjectives it has. So if you think that having adjectives in the text helps to communicate something, then you do text analysis by counting adjectives, right? So there are no prizes for guessing, but with me, we will be checking emotions, right? And we will be checking how far are emotions getting us. Now, I am not saying that grammar doesn't count. I am not saying that other aspects don't count. However, there are theoretical reasons why I'm focusing on emotions, and they're not just theoretical. They actually come from evidence from neuroscience, which I'm not touching upon today, even though Lala asked me. I think it's in the paper, and we can leave it for another session. I just want us to play today. And that's how I started. Maybe I can't remember with Lala. It was a long time ago when Lala came to my university. I just want to play. But before we play, I want you to sort of see things. So in the past, I would think that text is words organized by grammar. But if you think of text as words organized by grammar, then you cannot explain why you were polite. Right? So it's they words organized by grammar, but you can organize any words by grammar, and it's not a text. It's just maybe grammatically correct, but it may not be a text. Just words organized by grammar. So it's communication, as one of us or both of our colleagues said today. It is communication. So what do you communicate? Yes, you do communicate the message, but most of all, you wrap it in an emotion that you want to elicit in the audience. So your wife or your husband is angry with you and goes, "How could you do this?" And you want to pacify them, right? You don't want a fire at home. But darling, remember, I love you. Right? And that's it. It warms up the person. It reminds the person that they got married to you for a reason. And then maybe we can talk about what you have stuffed up, right? When you remind them, I love you. And then we can talk about the soup that didn't turn out good, or something stupid you did, or whatever, right? So there's there's a lot of politics happening in text, and that those politics are wrapped in emotion you want to elicit in the person. Now, the strategies that you use to do that, they don't come just from your head. You've seen them before. So our communication emerges from our experiences, from the community. And why do I say it's about participation in communities' conversations? It's complicated. Clearly, I didn't say it well enough on this slide. I said it better in the paper I will want you to read, but then it would be a bit longer. So when I want to elicit in you an emotion, I do it smartly, because I know what I can expect back. I've got enough of community knowledge or knowledge of the culture. It's participation in community conversations. I know enough of the context that if I say that, it is likely to elicit this. If I say this, it is likely, it's strategic. I don't just say what I want you to feel. I say what I know it will evoke, in what response it will evoke in you. So it's a communication, like you said, it's back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, right? So if you don't talk to anyone for 1 year and today you open your mouth, you are still doing the back and forth, because your every time you produce a text, it's not just action, it's a reaction as well, because it's based on your experience. Is it clear, or is it difficult? Every time, imagine communication is like tennis game, right? And imagine the ball is not gonna drop from your player for a year. So slow. But when you hit, it is still a strategic hit. It's always a response. Every time you open your mouth, it's not just action, it's actually a reaction. Every action is a reaction, right? It's a reaction to everything you know about the context. Now, why is it important? I think this will come out as you read. Why is it important? Yeah, I think I didn't get it pretty much under control yet, why it is important. But I do address a little bit of that in the paper. In fact, the whole paper is about it, where I talk that So every text we produce is a response, and this means that every text addresses a problem. Because if it is a response, like with a tennis racket, it's a response. It's a response. So it's always response to a problem. It's always response. So I had a dinner with Lala, his wife, and the little girl of Lala. What's her name, Lala?
Her name is Chacha. You could call her Chacha.
Right. So little Chacha sits next to me. I'm thinking she's just a little thing, is gonna eat their ice cream and she'll be quiet. None of that. When Lala wrote PhD, the whole family wrote that PhD. And Chacha says to me, Anya, are you saying, so she asked about the moral, but more or less, so let's turn it towards the problem. If you think of a cake recipe, is creating a cake recipe also a response to a problem? Is it? If you're with me, you may want to answer. So someone produces a book. So imagine this is a book. It's got a picture of a cake and a recipe. That text, is this a response in the book? Why? What is it responding to? If you buy a book and it has a recipe for a cake, if I say it's a response too, because every text is a response, right? Within the possible responses that are available in the community, right? So, but it is understandable, because if you produce a response that is not drawing on the structures available in your community, then you sound foreign. That's what being foreign often is. You just don't know the systems available. So we get a lot of Chinese in Australia, not maybe nowadays, but in the 90s, I remember, they would come to Australia, they would know all the words. But what would come out is we wouldn't understand a word, because the response was not from the available structures, which were English. They were from available structures, which may have been Chinese, I don't know. So a recipe is a response because it's a response to a need. I think you guys need to know how to make a cake like this. So I'm just gonna do that. Now, have you ever seen a fable? Do you know what's a fable? You know, a fable with a moral? So what's the moral of a recipe? Does a recipe have a moral? Okay, Nana, you're good, but you need to actually make your microphone working so I can hear you.
Can you hear me, Anya?
Yeah.
Take. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, in my point of view, that every text has the moral values, not only such kind of fables, folklore, and other things, but in this case, the value that from the recipe of the cake of recipe, that the writers wants to provide new information that maybe the readers that do not know before.
Yeah.
Maybe
that's a good abstract
in the recipe there will be the new. Yeah, it can be that kind of things, because when the chef writes the recipes, they want to show maybe this kind of special recipes that everybody doesn't have it. And yeah,
that's it.
So
that's the difference between the approach I'm teaching you and the linguistic approach. So there is a difference. I call this model the multisensory model because it does come out from neuroscience, but it comes out from research on how the brain processes information. how the brain processes information. So what we're doing with Andrew Lyon, we're looking at the commonalities of that process. Whereas what linguistics do, linguistics is not interested in the process of learning. They're interested in systems to differentiate. So this is different from this is different from this, based on some principle they invent for themselves, which is an abstract principle. They create systems of differentiation. However, they don't have a principle that will enable the student to work with these systems of differentiation in a very comfortable manner. I don't know how to put it, in a sense-making manner. So I'll just leave it here for a second, because I probably myself don't understand very well this concept yet. I mean, I understand, but I haven't articulated it often enough. So what we're looking with Andrew is at looking for tools that support students in meaning making. And when you think that every text addresses a problem, a recipe is about the problem, which is how to communicate to someone else their capacity to make a cake. So the emotion that you want to communicate when you create a recipe is the emotion of confidence, not just yours, but that the person who reads your recipe can feel confident reading it. Yes, I can do that. I can find 2 eggs. I can find 2 cups of sugar. I can find chocolate, right? So you don't want a recipe that evokes insecurity, fear, I can't do it, right? You want a recipe that evokes confidence in the reader, right? So you will be now thinking, that's why a recipe has got this linear, do this, do this, do this, do this, because the simpler, the more confident the person who is reading it feels. So it's about the problem, it's about communicating emotions. So now the structure will be dictated by the emotion, not by the genre. You can call it a genre, but really the structure is dictated by the emotion you want to communicate. Every text, in my view, has a moral. It doesn't have to be written. It is experienced. So with the recipe, which is the question that Chacha asked me, what's the moral of the recipe? And I had to think, zigzagging in my head, so that the little girl doesn't think I'm not an expert. So I had to portray myself as an expert, and I had to think very fast to answer a very smart question. And I said, well, it is implied. It is best if you do what I tell you if you want to have a cake, the way how we have here shown you on the photograph, right? If you say hello to your rector, what's the problem around which this hello is constructed? If you do not say hello to your rector, you will know how you got the moral wrong, how you got the problem wrong, because he will hate you, he will think you are improper, he will think you're arrogant, and he will ignore you back, right? So when you just say hello to your rector, what problem you address? Making sure he knows you're polite. You are acknowledging him. You are acknowledging your superiors. You don't have to like your rector, but you have to acknowledge the hierarchy. You're not an expert on everybody's character, right? But you have a hierarchy, and you have to be polite, because that's how the society functions, right? Otherwise, we just, scream. So hello is structured around the problem of showing you acknowledge and accept the hierarchy. And what's the moral of the hello? The moral of the hello is it's best to show that you acknowledge the hierarchy because you don't want to see the consequences of not to. Right? You just don't want to say it. I mean, I, at my workplace, had people that I didn't necessarily like, but they were my colleagues or in my hierarchy, my superiors. And, you know, you have to acknowledge hierarchy because that's how it is. So even a little hello is a response from available responses, right? And it's a good one because if you say hello or good morning or whatever is the polite version in your university, you choose that one to evoke a specific emotion in the rector. And the moral is it's best to do it if you don't want to have negative consequences, right? So these are nice, what they call heuristic, which means pragmatic, practical ways of thinking very simply about text, which is what do I want to achieve from it? So what's the problem I want to address? And how will I, and then the student or you are thinking, how the heck am I gonna word it to achieve this particular outcome? So you narrow down for yourself the problem that you want to address, and you also are very clear about the outcome you want to achieve from the text. So in English, I found out, I didn't know the word before because I'm not native in English. English is my sixth language. I learned Polish, Russian, German, English, French, and Latin, 6 languages. So when I was writing the paper, it's called the bookends, right? So they frame the problem and the moral, they frame the text. You really want to be very aware of the problem you want to address and the thing you want to end up with, right? Because if you get it wrong, then you sometimes will have to hide or say sorry or excuse yourself or people will not understand you. Now, you would be surprised, and I may have time today to show you that these two things are never present in students' texts. Why? Well, because students are taught to think of text as a collection of words and grammar. So they produce a lot of words. They string it in some grammatical things. Then they put it together and they usually, what happens when students write texts in this way, when they're not clear about the frame of the text, they write so much. And for some reason, they think that I will read everything. I don't. I am such an expert in reading. I pick the things that I want to see in the text, and when I don't see it, I fail the text. Simple as this. They have to be there. If they're not there, I'm not playing with it. It's you can't write. As simple as that. So I think we've learned a lot today so far about the framing, right? About that's extremely important. Now, identifying the problem of your word. Say if you want to say hello to your rector, that's simple. But if you write an essay or if you write a PhD, you know the hardest thing about writing a PhD or a master thesis is to identify the problem. It is so hard. And to narrow it down, it's even harder, right? Usually what students do in the academic writing, they say, I'm going to improve the teaching of English. And I'm thinking well, yeah, you'd be the first one. Right? It's like you may contribute. So that would be if sort of part of the moral, if we do this, then maybe we add a little bit towards that goal. Yeah, but it's not the problem. It's kind of like part of the moral, a little bit. If we do this, maybe that will contribute a little bit, a step forward. But identifying the problem, it's an art, right? That's what makes text witty, funny, good, because someone has clarity of the mind and know exactly where to hit it, right? So let's have a look what we have here. So I ran things. This is the project I ran in Cambodia. So these people, after this person who wrote this text, after he wrote it, next month he would go to secondary school and teach English, right? I'm not sure whether you can see it properly, so I'm just gonna make it larger. I'll make it larger and I will ask you to spend 3 minutes. I highlighted things here for myself so I could read it because it was so much text. I tried to make sense out of it, right? So I made these highlights. You may use them, you may not. I want you to read it. I'll give you a minute or two. And I want you to tell me what was the subject of this text, of this little essay. Now, don't get skewed by his title, right? It's typical. Someone put something there, just whatever. Just think. I gave them specific question to answer. Can you guess it?
Anya, could you please readmit Aussie? I think she's waiting to be readmitted.
Okay.
And then
I just have to see how to do it. Anyone else? Everybody else is here? Lala, is anyone else waiting?
I think Nizar is waiting, but maybe
No.
yeah.
I think it's fine.
Thank you.
So have a look at the text, if you don't mind reading it. All right, that's enough, I think. Can you tell me what you think the subject of this particular essay was?
Yeah. I think this text talks more about Elsie's family, not really his or her childhood. I think he talks more about his family rather than himself or herself.
I'm just wondering what made this person. Okay, so when you analyze the text, remember that, as you mentioned to me before, the text is communication, right? So I will put it in some Anglo-Saxon crude ways. When you talk to me, you are taking time out of my life. I will never have this time back. Do you understand it? Why is this person taking 5 minutes out of my life with this text? Tell me, what is it that I gained from this text? What was in it for the audience? Why would I want to know all of that? Look at the moral or ending of the text. Mom always forces us to take nap after lunch, but we never do it. We always play with each other. Then that makes us, get blamed from mom so often. Why did I need to know that? What's in it for the reader? Now, when you talk to your daughter or to your child, son or daughter, or to your husband or to me, it is something for me to somehow to impact me, right? To agree, disagree, contribute to me, change my direction, ask whether you should, right? There's something for you in it and something definitely for me, right? So even if you want to kill me, you communicate it to me so that I know what's going on or something like that, right? So when you are dealing with another person and you call it communication, then somehow this text must consider audience, and it has to be in it something for the audience to take home, and a takeaway message or something that makes me want to read it or see the reason for it. I'll show you another text before I tell you what the job of these assignments was supposed to be. Okay, I'll show you another one. So I wrote these things in the beginning, here, those, because I was giving a talk somewhere, or maybe I did it just for myself as I was analyzing. Anyway, I just wanted to see for myself a structure. Notice that I'm very much driven by structure of a text. Just wanted to see what was this text about. So you can have a look. I'll go to the next page just in case there's something there. My struggle since childhood have been very difficult because my poor parents and not as good at school. Thank you so much for reading. I wish you good health and a long life. Great. I hope I'll have a good health and good life. Now, I don't know. I'm not Indonesian. I'm not Buddhist from Cambodia. So for my eye, which is Western eye, I die of laughter when I see the text finishing. I wish you good health. I don't know whether you laugh. I think Indonesian people finish with something like, what is it called? What is it? Lala, what is it? Some sort of, what is it?
Waalaikumsalam. Sort of like that.
I'm not laughing at religion. I'm just thinking at the end of the text, it's like, like maybe for an Indonesian person, to an Indonesian person, maybe that makes sense, right? But when you write it, so you have to weigh up. That's what I was talking about, available resources, right? So it's a response chosen on available resources. Now, you can cross the cultures by all means, but if you do it too often, and right, rather than show your range, what you do is show your limitations all the time. I mean, there are different ways of finishing the text. No? So you will never guess what, so that text was probably similar as the other one, right? I think. Is it similar or different? Now, you're not saying anything. So my question is, why the heck did I have to know everything about his mother, his father, he was born whenever, until the age of 13 he went to school and never rode the bicycle? Why did I have to know that? What's in this text that makes it clear that this information is important for me? Now, we may not have enough time to read this text 30 times to maybe find one word that will justify it. But you can see when I was talking about framing, I would like to see the problem that this text is addressing. So the problem should be indicated relatively early. So he was born in 1982 and lived in something village, in some district in this province. Since his childhood, something, I have father and mother. All right, so he has father and mother. We tend all to have both. His parents have children, 7 people, 4 boys and 3 girls, including him, I guess. The other ones were born, or something happened between 80. Okay, so the other ones were born in those years. He studied somewhere in the primary school. He studied in the secondary school. I have studied in some high school. When he studied in childhood until 18, I met poverty. So he was poor. His parents were poor. Everybody was poor. The whole Cambodia is poor. He had to overcome obstacles, whatever. And then he studied for teacher training in the Kampong province. And then he was studying all the time, but his parents were farmers living remote. It just goes on and on and on. And you just want to, you wonder, why are you taking my time? So you can see, there was another text like this, I think. There's another one. I highlighted just the beginnings. We all have past memories, because the subject of the assignment that I asked them to do was describe a memory from your childhood, something that happened, something special that happened to you. So instead of focusing on something special, they didn't know how. You see? And what you call it, you don't call it inability to write, you call it inability to think abstractly. When someone cannot take a topic, describe a special memory from your childhood, when they cannot frame it around a problem, it's not the writing problem, it's the thinking problem. And the thinking problem, as you will learn from my paper, is inability to identify the emotion you want to evoke or invoke in the audience. Do you want to scare them? Do you want them to feel sorry for you? Do you want to communicate or pass on some lesson that people can learn? I'm very happy. Like, I don't know the Islam culture so much, but I think all of you are from Islamic background. So so say parallel to Christianity, I could think of an event that I could draw a parallel with Christian teaching and show this was the lesson I learned, right? You could have done that. You could have done it with Buddhism. You could have done it with Islam religion, with anything. So you could have wrapped a memory from which you learned a lesson that vindicated something of a higher order, how to be in life, a lesson to take home. So it could have been anything. So it's inability to frame. And inability to frame means inability to identify a focus. What's the focus? What problem will you be targeting to illustrate how this problem became a memory worth having? It's a memory worth having, right? Well, instead of doing that, because they haven't, so that's the cognitive problem. It's an emotional problem and it's a cognitive problem. It's not writing problem. Unfortunately, when you don't see it this way, very often people will read it, oh, you just can't write. Or worse, people will say, oh, you've written 300 words, you write well. You don't write well. You get to university in Australia and you will be crying every day, because people like me will be rejecting your assignments daily. I will be sending you to workshops for learning to write. And the people who will be teaching you how to write don't have my theory. They have different things, which I don't think work very well. So you will be really crying. Right? So these are real problems. Because just because you wrote this many words, because they think, okay, it's in English, so consequently, yes, you can write. No, you can't. You just can put on paper English words, but it's a waste of time for everybody. And you're getting nowhere with it. And if you are unlucky to get a scholarship in Australia, you will see that you couldn't write, right? And especially in an Australian system, but in every system, Western system, they will really screw you on identifying the problem. You need, especially in academic writing, you need to identify the problem. You can't just write about everything, because everything is bigger than life. Right? So look at this guy. So I have lots of past memories. And this is what he says here. In the second or third sentence, I hoped here that he might identify some problem. I have some childhood memories too that I can never forget. Today, I will talk about some of these memories. I shouldn't ignore my past memories. I have lots of friends. I used to visit my village. When the ball went to the pond, it just went. I'm not sure whether his was better than others. It's disconnected in some way. So now we are on the Olympic Stadium. Here we are about childhood memories again. This is something about the ball going to the pond. This is about the village. I don't know. I don't have the time to read it. Maybe it's better. Maybe it's worse written. I don't know. I'm just leaving it to you. We should never ignore our past memories. These are big lessons in life. Most of them are so his memories are with his friends, family. Just goes on and on about it. I'm still connected to a few friends. Like, why are you writing about your friends? What's the significance of it? I used to visit my village, by the way, just in case you wanted to know, Anya. I go like, oh, I'm so grateful to you that you're going to visit your village. And one day the ball fell into the pond, and must have been a miracle. Right. It was a shocking memory, by the way. So there, however, we recover, and I can laugh now. And then again, I had another memory, and so on. Like, my job at this very moment is not to decide whether I would fail this person or give them pass or give them credit, right? I'm just not going to now sit here and twist my head in eights to wonder how much I would accept or not. What I'm trying to say is that the structure is unclear, it's uninteresting, it doesn't engage you straight at the front, at the beginning. It has to engage you somehow. So you will see in these texts that I analyzed in the article that Lala will give you or has given you, this girl is writing about the boots of her grandma. She says, yeah, I always wanted to have those boots, great boots. But my grandmother has died, and I didn't think I'll get them this soon. It was just a shock. And you go like, oh my God, grandma dead, right? And you feel it. I mean, if you're a human being, even if you hate your grandma, you still feel it, that grandma should be loved, right? Even if you may personally not like your grandma, it doesn't matter. Overall, it's a family. And if a family member dies, it's something in you dies, right? So you're getting involved because you can relate to it. And then you think, what's next? And she takes you. What's next as a result? Not in addition to, but as a result. So grandma died, and as a result, things happened. This, and this, and this. And you go, oh my God. So you feel engaged, and then you read what happened as a result of grandma's death. So you're involved, and then you compare and contrast with yourself. Oh my God, if my grandma died and this happened then, what would I feel? If my grandmother died and this happened next, what would I feel? Right? And you just read like this. But if it is like, if it's lacking this clear focus, this clear framing, then let's have a look at the moral. Maybe there is something here. Without those memories, I can say that I wouldn't be who I am. Well, yes, childhood memories, not all memories, right? So, and the subject was one memory, describe one memory that, had a significance to you. One, not the lifetime of memories. Anyway, so what did I write here? I wrote something like, compare with a beginning like this. Everyone, this is just a crude text, but just to show you the difference, everyone has had an experience that either frightened them to the bone or triggered strong emotion that they recall instantly in similar circumstances. And you think, yeah, right? Instantly you engage. Yeah, I remember the thing that frightened me to the bone, and I remember things that, like yesterday, I went for a walk and there was a smell of plants, and I went, I hate this smell. I remember blah 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 instantly, right? So these experiences, like my own, are not to scare us, but to teach us about our inner power that helped us overcome those circumstances. They remind us how much we are part of the greater human family. Like you draw on some shared experiences, shared feelings, shared values to communicate a point, right? So if I'm writing for greater audience, I'm not going to write about one specific thing. I will, but I need to connect it with experiences, values, beliefs, to engage others so that they can go with me on the journey. So these were just comparable words. How long have we been going, Lala?
It's been like an hour, more than an hour.
Okay, so should we do this?
Yeah, sure.
All right. So I just wanted to point out to you some things, guys. Do you have any questions, by the way? Or do you want to add something? Yeah?
Well, after listening to you giving some examples of your students, maybe your students' text, I reflect on what my students have written so far, because I'm teaching reading and also writing. And yes, most of what my students has written so far, it doesn't really engage me in some way. It doesn't really engage me. So I'm not really interested in reading their text, their writing. So maybe I have to reflect on myself. Maybe I didn't really think them how to think, how to frame, and I just start with the structure. Maybe after listening to you, I reflect on what I did with my students. So that's it, Miss.
So I will send to Lala the little video I created on project-based learning, because all of this is talking about the audience, right? There has to be a value to the audience. Now, from what you're saying to me, Ozzy, the problem you are having is not necessarily what you said, is that you have set yourself up as the audience. And that's the problem. Your students are not writing reports on what they have seen on television, of the movie they saw, of the book they read, or of what's happening in their university for other people to read. They're not engaging in text for others to understand, to affect others. They don't go through process of reflection of how to choose words. So when people read my movie review or the book review, they will want to buy the book. Right? You set yourself as as a source of knowledge and also as a receiver of students' text. They will never be authentic. They will always be schooly. Maybe you can improve a little bit that element, but I think a much more powerful way is when students have their own. I mean, we did experiments with students, so that was a long time ago. For example, one of them, there are two of them of this kind, but students had a website, and it was a university website, their own, and they were communicating with the entire, Konkan University in Thailand. So I don't know whether it's a province, but the whole area around Konkan University in Thailand, right? So in Konkan. So the community was reading it. That was 24 years ago when they had hardly any internet. So we've invented ways, but the community, the university community, the broader community, like the people from outside were reading it. They were writing responses. They were thanking them. They were making suggestions how to improve those stories or those whatever. They were creating advertisements to tell the community about services that the university is providing for the community, so that people from outside would learn about activities of your university. So really, they were doing authentic tags for authentic communities in order to affect them in the way so that they get interested in those texts, that they like the university from which they were reporting, all kinds of things. So yes, Elsie, you said it correctly, but you can expand on it and make the tasks themselves authentic so that you are not the only receiver of those texts. Yes, you can check them for appropriateness, to give them a grade, which is correct. But you also want those texts to be sourced in students' motivations to affect others, not you, not the teacher alone, because the old paradigm is I teach you English, I give you English, and you give me English back.
I see. Yeah.
It created enormous problems during lockdowns. And I tell you why. So I've written this paper. I'm still waiting for people in Taiwan to tell me whether they will accept it for publication or not. I can understand why they had problems with my manuscript. I really do. For example, I wrote, when you were teaching on Zoom, you should have been teaching in Indonesian. I tell you why. So the whole article is about pre-service teachers on practicum, teaching English in schools using Zoom. So the student teacher didn't really speak English well. Students in the school didn't speak English well. Zoom is a terrible medium. It's a terrible medium. Nobody knew what the other person was saying, right? It was a mess. Wouldn't it be better if a student in school had a project to do? You would on Zoom use Indonesian to help them manage the project, identify resources, identify ways of how to word things, where to find expressions, how to use even Google Translate, right? So basically, you discuss resources, you discuss project management, and they are involved in doing things within the project boundary. Way better, way better. and you overcome the difficulty of Zoom. And they only had 20 minutes on Zoom with students. By the time they did the list of, what is it called when you check the list? Yeah, I always think of a German word for it. Anwesenheitsliste. I'm not sure. I always think in German about this. But when you do the list to check how many students are present, that took 15 minutes. So you only had 5 minutes left. And you spoke with broken English, and your kids spoke with broken English, and then we all went home. It was a nightmare. But that's because it was framed. I give you English, you give me English back, as opposed to I help you manage your learning and you do a project.
Thank you.
Now, obviously, your students will be stealing text from Google Translate and from. But that's great. That's great. The idea then is for them to say it, to make presentations, spoken presentations. It's great. I mean, ChatGPT is like your editor. By all means, steal it. But then when you make a presentation, oral presentation, you actually have to understand what you actually have to learn it, and actually maybe even answer questions, because people may ask you questions. So now we are rethinking the way we assess. I'm happy for my students to have access to perfect editors. So I don't have to hold their pen and correct everything. But think of how they can now then use those written texts in order for assessment. So you put them in debates context, you put them in the context of spoken situations. So whatever it takes to break that paradigm, I give you English and you give me English back. Okay. So I'll just take a little bit of your time. So Google has plenty of these things. So what are they? So for example, I just found it today. So this one is a list of character traits. So for example, you want to discuss how this particular hero in that story, what will we say about him? Was he benevolent? And what does it mean benevolent? Well, let's check in the dictionary. Okay. Was he bright? Was he brilliant? Was he broad-minded? By the time you run this list with kids, every time you do a story, after about 4 or 5 meetings with you, they will know all the words. Now notice, you are not focusing on learning those words. You are just trying to use those words to identify the the character traits of your heroes in the particular short story you're using with your kids. So that's really like cheating a little bit, but it's very nice. It's a very nice trick. The same with emotions. So there are lists of emotions on Google. This is not the best one. I have better ones. I just couldn't find anything 10 minutes before the meeting. Because sometimes I'm not sure if Lala has them, when there is a list of positive and next to it is the opposite. So this is, for example, all the words which are positive about clarity, helpful, I don't know, whatever. And then next to it is the opposite. So it's a negative. So we've got beautiful lists on Google of emotions. Now, why would they put them up there if they were not important, right? Why would Google be full of those lists of emotions if they are not important? They're not important because in education we don't use it. But in research, in neuroscience, in serious fields, they use them. In psychology, they use them because it's extremely important. It's just that we're not necessarily yet up to it. So I'm just pointing out that there is stuff there. So if we were to try to identify emotions, off we go with students and say, was that person angry? Was it annoyed? Was he afraid, awkward, affectionate, alarmed? By the time you go through this list a few times, kids will know it by heart, what these words mean. The easiest way to learn words. So what I want you to do with me, we will be reading this text, and I want you to tell me, for example, I remember when I was working with Lukman, soon Dr. Lukman, I hope. So Lala's colleague from Borneo. And so with different students of mine, I work differently, obviously, for whatever reason. So I asked Lukman, how do you know that this sentence belongs or is part of the whole story? So what's the connection between this and this? Like, how do you know that they come from the same text? So how do you know that sentence 2 is part of the same same scene which was in sentence 1, right? So how do you know they are connected? So think about that, and let's read. We're not going to do the whole text today because that's going to take an hour, but let's have a look just at the first sentence. In a field, one summer's day, a grasshopper was hopping about, chirping and singing to its heart's content. So it's a just happy insect. An ant passed by, bearing along with great toil an ear of corn he was taking to the nest. So how do we know that this sentence is part of the same picture, of the same scene? So sentence 2 and sentence 1, right? How do we know that sentence 2 is part of the picture that we started to paint in sentence 1? Do we know? Are they part of the same picture?
I think they are part of the same pictures. The same picture. I think it's. I don't know. It's a sequence. So a lot of things happen.
What makes it a sequence?
No, I think it isn't necessarily a sequence, but a lot of things can happen at the same time. I
But
think.
how do you know it's happening one after another or at the same time? How do you know that's happening in the same picture? How do you know?
Because the verb and passed by. I think. I don't know from that
What
word.
does it mean? What does it mean, pass by?
Pass by.
Anybody else? What's it passed by?
Probably
Going
when
through. Mhm.
the grasshopper. Oh, banana.
I can't hear. Someone else is talking at the same time.
All right. I think that when the grasshopper was hopping about, chirping and singing, the ant moving in front of him.
Just crossed.
Bring,
The paths have crossed, right?
yes.
Okay, so let's assume that that's correct. Now, the paths have crossed. That's very interesting. Cross. What does cross mean? You're sort of doing things and then, right? It's an interruption, isn't it?
Yeah.
When someone crosses, so it's not next to him, with him, or with it, as in English. I mean, in English, grasshopper should be it, but sometimes they call it he as well, right? Okay, so let's call it he. So it wasn't parallel, it was it crossed basically its path, right? Or his path. So that's very interesting. Imagine even the picture is something, it's an interruption, right? So he's walking. So how is the grasshopper? What emotion is the grasshopper communicating?
Happy, probably.
You don't think about the grasshopper being happy. What emotion you feel when you think of the grasshopper here? You feel happy that's a happy behavior, right? The grasshopper is happy. And then when the end crossed, there is an interruption. And so it's very interesting. But this way, is it still a happy picture with an end?
No.
Surprise, probably.
Yes.
Different, right? So there is a break here in the text. Can you see it? Right? So first, happiness is communicating, free, carefree, right? Carefree, being carefree, summer, good, all good. Nothing can go wrong. So here we have two situations. We have two things being, there's interruption, crossed his path. That's first thing, right? Passed by, like what the heck is that, right? Rather than being with me, walking along with me, something crossed my path. And on top of it, what did you say? Surprise, right? What else did you say? You feel? What else is communicated here? So it's a surprise, something weird, right? Something
Yeah.
different, right?
This-
There's a difference of sort, right? Later on, we can name these emotions better, but we can see that there is a separation. And what's happening here? Why not come and chat with me, said the grasshopper. Instead of toiling and moiling with that bloody stuff you carry on your head, why are you doing that thing? And the end is saying, I'm helping to lay up food for the winter and recommend you do the same. Why bother about winter? Said the grasshopper. We've got plenty of food at present. So what are they doing? They are communicating together, right? Clarifying the weirdness of the encounter, right? The surprise. Right? They're clarifying their position. First, I was doing my own jumping and hopping. Then you cross my path with that stupid thing you're carrying. Let's talk about that shit. I think you should do what I do. And the end is saying, from my perspective, I think you should do what I do. So it's a clarifying positions, right? So it's about clarifying. So this discussion serves the emotion for us to be clear about the positions on the problem. And the problem is, why is the end behaving differently? Right? So the problem of a story, you know how we're looking for the frame of a story? The problem of a story is, why is the end behaving differently than the grasshopper? That's the problem, right? So now we have a bit of a clarification here. So you see how I color things? It's really useful to color things. And the text has clear stages here. And then what happened? But the end went on its way and continued its toil. So what emotion is it here you feel when you read this? But the end went on its what? We could actually look. What's this? Anyway, so I I think I just don't have enough emotions here. I think we would say that the end is conscientious, right? I think how to spell it is like that. I never know how to spell it. Conscientious, which means disciplined, continuing with the work, right? Discipline, continuing with the work. So the emotion is that I feel all this and continues working hard. So I feel that the end, the emotion about end, I sympathize, I feel empathy for the end. I feel that the end is conscientious. It's hardworking, you know. What else? It's not carefree. What's the opposite of carefree? What's the opposite of carefree? Conscientious, hardworking. It's also planning, working towards a goal, right? So planning ahead. So the emotion is that I feel empathy for the hardworking end, right? I feel empathy, but also understanding, and understanding for the end. That's what I feel, because I get it. Now we all would like to be somewhere else now, right? I would like to be in the mountains, and you would like to do something else. Unfortunately, if we all did silly things, we would never have time to do silly things, right? Because we would never be able to pay for them. So there's time to do some things and then time for other things. All right. So basically here we had what I call dialogue, on the problem, right? And then we have what I call development. What happened after the dialogue? They just conscientiously went on its way, continued hardworking. And so I feel I understand the end. I understand. The end said we need to work for winter. We need to plan for winter. So I feel empathy for the end, but I also understand the end. So the way this sentence was communicated to me, it's very clear to me from my perspective. I understand the end had to do it because we all have to. We know that summer is not always lasting the whole year. Now look at this. But when the winter came, the grasshopper had no food and found itself dying of hunger. Right? So now we have the resolution of the story, right? Resolution. So what happened? The grasshopper found itself dying of hunger. But look at this thing here. This is really cruel. Wasn't just dying of hunger. It was looking at the ants distributing everyday corn and grain from the stores they collected in summer. So look at the torture. It's not just found itself dying because it had no food. It was looking at the ants eating every day. So it wasn't just one torture. It was torture today, torture tomorrow, the torture the day after tomorrow. Every day they were eating, and the grasshopper was withering away. And now we have the moral. Clearly stated, doesn't have to be. Not every story has a clearly stated moral. Sometimes you have to think it out. It's implicit. Then the grasshopper knew it is best to prepare for days of necessity. I'll show you some things. I'll just take another 10 minutes, okay? Just 10 minutes. I'll just show you two things. So I'll just signal something before we meet again, just so that we have that signaled. I call it focus, which is you focus the initial emotion. Where are we? So I don't know the Indonesian stories, but in Cinderella, we would have far away in some country, in a beautiful forest, lived happy family with a little daughter, and they've forever and ever, right? So it's a beautiful beginning. It's a beautiful focusing. in nature, in the forest, happy family, mommy and daddy and the daughter. What's emotion? I can relate to it. I live with my mommy and daddy. We have a home. I'm happy. It's all good. Oh, what a lucky family. As lucky as I am, right? So that's an emotion of engagement with the story, relating, and it's positive. And then the mother died. And you go, oh my God. And how old are you when you read Cinderella? 6? So imagine you're 6 years old and you read The Nightmare and the mother died. And you go like, oh my God, imagine my mother died, you know. So it's quite a shock, right? It's a shock. So that's the same as here with the end, right? It's a break in the story. So those breaks are emotional because the story is a sequence of emotions through which you actually drag the reader. So that the point of the story is clearer because you don't think with your reasoning, with your front head, you actually think with your emotions, right? So imagine when people would now, I don't know about Indonesia, but I will give you Indonesian example using my Polish emotions. If someone played the Indonesian anthem this very moment, would you respond with your heart? Probably.
Yes, probably.
Don't respond with your frontal cortex. You respond here. Because that's where understanding is. Deep understanding is emotional. Narrow understanding, like almost none, is here. This is memory. From memory to actually profound understanding, it takes a path, and that profound understanding translates into emotions, deep emotions. And that's a shortcut for the organism, but that's how organisms remember. It's because emotions help you. Otherwise, you would have to remember every incident of your life. Right? Instead, what you do, you build complex emotional networks, and they are a beautiful shortcut for you to actually react appropriately. Not think, okay, there's an Indonesian anthem being played. How should I react now? What should I do? What do other people do? You know, it would take you forever to react. Okay, so a story is a sequence of emotions for you to get the message. So now the author, actually every story begins with a conclusion, with a moral. What the heck do I want you to get out of my text? How can I translate this moral into a problem for you to see why I think you should get that message? See what I'm saying? If I want you to know this thing, now I have to think, how can I create a moral, a problem? So this is made up. This part is made up for you to get that. So 10,000 years ago, when these stories were created, you know, they came from India to Greece 2,500 years ago. But these are old stories, old, as old as humanity. So imagine you had children and your children didn't want to work. And the moral is, you bloody have to work. So then you think to yourself, how can I pass on the message, you have to work, to the child? Okay, I will create the problem. I will contrast two characters, one that works, one that doesn't. This will help me to get my point across. You have to work. So the story the story never begins here. The story doesn't begin here. The story always begins with the moral. If your students knew what they want to communicate, the rest would come easier. So that's number one thing to solve. Then number two is this, to solve, and then you just introduce it. So to have an interruption between the beginning and the problem, right? You need to create an interruption of sorts so that the problem comes up, is visible. So here was happiness, carefree, and then all of a sudden a surprise, like, why can't you be as happy as the grasshopper? And then we clarify. So dialogue is a perspective on the problem. It's like in a thesis, literature review, right? Why is this problem a problem? Well, because look at the literature. By the way, I got that structure from literature review. I mean, from the thesis. This structure is nothing new, but a structure from your research, right? So this is your what happened in the thesis, methodology. This is your findings, and this is the recommendation. And I'm claiming every text has this structure. Hello has some parts of it implicit, right? So hello is basically development. You said hello. That's what you did. Or maybe resolution. It is a resolution. No, hello is here. Resolution is your rector is happy. The moral is people see you. You've done the thing to look that you respect other people, right? Because it's the safest and moral thing to do, right? So I claim all texts have the same structure simply because we only have one mind. I'm happy for genre pedagogy to have 5,000 different genres that go this and that and that and that. At the end of the day, they all have the same structure. And when I teach my student, my job is for student to see sequences. My job is not for students to remember vocabulary, to remember every grammar point, to remember every different structure of a genre, to remember something else until their heads explode, right? Later on, we will also see how ineffective genre pedagogy is, right? They're effective for linguistics, but they are ineffective for teaching writing, totally ineffective. So we will look at that too, but not today. Now, just one thing I want you to talk to me about, and I'll show you what I did. And you can, if you get interested, you can actually play a little bit yourselves with ChatGPT. Does everybody have access to ChatGPT?
Yes, okay. I do.
I pay for it because I use it all the time, and I just don't want it to fail on me. So I pay $20 a month, but it's free, right? But first of all, why does the story begin in a field? Notice, this is a trick I use with my students. A grasshopper was hopping about. That's the sentence. That's the grammatically correct sentence, right? Everything else, everything else is extra. It doesn't have to be in a field, and this is also extra. This first sentence could have been, a grasshopper was hopping about. There's a lot of elements in this sentence that are not necessary for the sentence to be grammatically correct. You see that? So the question is, why did the author added this extra information if they didn't need to? Because the sentence, a grasshopper was hopping about, was fine. So let's start first with the field. Why did the text begin with the field? What does it make you feel? When you hear in a field, what do you feel? Because remember, every word is used to manipulate you as a reader. Text is not written for the author, which we often make a mistake. The text is not written for the author, it's written for you. The author, when the author writes, the author is thinking, how will you receive this text? So I'm choosing words to affect you, not myself. I already know the text. I already know the message. I need to affect you. So why do we start in a field?
Yeah, Anya, maybe in the field we can have many things that we people need to think about what really happens in the field. It's so many things can happen there. So it's kind of about to make people think about everything can happen in the field, the kind of things.
Everything can happen everywhere. So it's a little bit imprecise. Can you be more precise?
Yeah.
Okay, can you be more precise?
I mean, when we talk about like for instance in jungle, so in jungle we can see many animals, we can see many plants, trees, and so on. So in the field, it shows to think that we can do many things. There are many things that we can have there. That's what I can say. And
Okay, so what you're saying is, this is quite good actually. What you're saying is, what emotion do you feel when you hear, what can you identify the emotion? I don't have a list of emotions, but can you come up with something?
what's that?
When I read,
Insecurity. If everything is, but you connect, you compared it with the jungle. I don't feel unsafe. Unsafe. Is it what you meant? Okay, so who was saying? Elsie, were you saying something?
yeah, when I read the word in a field, I imagine spacious place, so I feel relaxed and chill. Maybe, yeah. When I read the word field, yeah, spacious,
All right,
relaxed.
spacious, very beautiful. So look at that. What happens? I don't. We don't have time to think about it tomorrow, right? But here it is. I presume that if, okay, so this fable was accepted in Greece. Greece has summer in winter. Greece has fabulous summers, but in winter they get snow. I guess that in northern India, where the fable comes from originally, probably they have snow as well. So in a field, it could be summer, it could be winter. It can make you feel safe, but it can make you also unsafe. What about when it's dark and you are in a field? What about if it is cold and it's raining and you are in a field? But what about if it is a summer's day and you are in a field? So there is a tension. It's a bit insecure, right? So then he says, okay, it's a field, the author says, but don't worry, it's only summer, right? So it's clarified. If a field was not clarified, you would go like, what does that mean? Because it could be like a jungle. One moment, okay, another moment you get eaten. Right? So in a field, so you have to now move away from equator, from Indonesia, and go to Northern Europe. The field is relaxing, fantastic in summer, but it's a horrible place come November. Horrible place come November. Rain, slit, which is like icy rain. It cuts your skin. I was raised in Northern Europe, right? The rain, when it hits your cheeks, it literally cuts it. It is like a slit. It's like ice, and so it's unpredictable. And that's how the story begins. It begins with a tension, and the tension which predicts which talks about the unpredictability, and you need to prepare yourself, because when things are unpredictable, you need to have some securities, because today you're fine, but tomorrow you're drowning or dying, same thing, right? So look at the beauty of a text, how how nicely it is framed. It does have a message, So in order to frame it, it beautifully integrates the problem, says, we will have a problem which is a bit of uncertainty, but it's all good. And then we'll have interruption, right? So it's all good. It's a bit unsafe here, but we will clarify it. It's all lovely. And then we have this interruption to get you to the point that you understand that you have to work, right? And it starts beautifully. A bit unsafe, but we will get you to the relaxed stage because it is, after all, summer. But don't get too relaxed, because the end will remind you that being relaxed will not last, right? Now, I did this thing. I'm teaching this thing for a long time now, right? So I teach my undergraduate students and so on. And my undergraduate students speak English natively because they're all Australian, or most of them. So I wrote to ChatGPT and I said, why did the story of the grasshopper and the ant begin in a field? And we are told that ChatGPT knows nothing about emotions. If you ask ChatGPT, what emotion do you feel? It will say it feels no emotion. But if you ask ChatGPT what emotion it is invoking in the reader, it will tell you. And look at that. Why in the field? It's first one is conveying freedom. Second, emphasizing contrast, summer, winter. Generating empathy. The grasshopper is at home in summer. However, it will change. Setting mood, like you said. In summer, it's beautiful, it's warm, it's life, it's abundance, right? And okay, so you came up with 4 points justifying why the story began with the word field. Isn't it lovely? You can ask about every word. You can ask with students. What else did I do? I teach people how to create summaries of text. I will show you later on. I don't have the time today. But look at I asked ChatGPT to summarize the fable. And it started, yes, I will talk about the structure of it later on. But basically, look at this, how nicely it did. It's about the importance of foresight, hard work, preparation for the future. It started with the values. Right? It didn't say, one day there was a grasshopper, and then there was an ant, and they met in the field, and the grasshopper was happy, and the ant wasn't happy. Right? It didn't start the summary like a child. It started with the values. This is extremely important. When I was looking, and I don't think I have this text prepared today, but I was looking how genre people teach. See, because I have so many PowerPoints that I just can't find all of them. So I was looking how genre people teach book review. And I will show it to you next time. The book review that they were teaching started like this. The story is about the coat, and the coat was lonely, and then the coat found this man who was also lonely, and then the man put the coat on. Now, would you buy a book like that? You'd buy a book that says, this book for little children is a didactic narrative, which means it has a teaching value, and it is about the importance of foresight, the importance of hard work, the importance of preparation for the future. Now you want to buy the book because it's about values. It stresses values right at the start of the book review. Right? Now you go, okay, everything else is nice, but at least you know what values is the book communicating, right? That's how lovely ChatGPT did that. Not every time it does it. Once it did something else. I was looking at students' texts. Okay, so first it's summarized like this. a text, doesn't matter, we're not looking at this text today, but it's summarized. The story begins with the narrator falling asleep in their bed. When they wake up, they find, okay, so just sort of begin in a normal way. But I said, now summarize it in an abstract way. Exploration of the surreal and disorienting nature of dreams. See the difference? It started with the message, what the story is really about. Like with the grasshopper, it's summarized with the values, and here it's summarized with the connections, or I don't know, they're not values, but they are different aspects of human consciousness or subconsciousness even. So it says it's about these different aspects of human consciousness that this particular text is exploring. How nice. Now you can think, oh, that's interesting. And it's a much nicer way than to summarize this way. The story is about narrator falling asleep and then waking up and then thinking he's lost. Right. So we will go to these points another day. I'll show you techniques of how to do it. And ChatGPT is excellent for working with it, because in the beginning you can work with students and asking ChatGPT to do these summaries, and if it summarizes in this way, then ask it to summarize in abstract terms, and it will do it very nicely. And you learn how to think abstractly. You don't have to have these terms yourself as a teacher. I didn't. When I wrote the paper that I will have you read, I had these terms, but in a very average way. ChatGPT gave me beautiful vocabulary, and that way you start acquiring this vocabulary, and then in about 2 months you talk like this. It is transformative. It's a transformative use of ChatGPT. It teaches you how to talk. So with a little bit of help from me when it comes to emotional text analysis, and of ChatGPT giving you words, and now the way I explained it to you, you can see clearly the difference, and you can see the difference emotionally and in terms of the message of the text and all of that. Now, after this hour or 2 hours with me, you can see the difference between these two summaries very clearly. And it makes your work with ChatGPT more interesting. And now you can see that once you ask ChatGPT to summarize stories in abstract ways, focusing on values, then you can make your students do the same, and then ask your students to talk this way and defend their thesis, their thinking in relation to such values. Not in relation to, I was little, I had parents, and I had 7 siblings, and we had lots of memories. Memories are really good because you can memorize them. Right? So it takes you away from that pedestrian thinking. It's not that you are pedestrian or I am pedestrian, but the way we speak is not necessarily the same as we think. We think abstractly but don't have words for it. So you need to bridge it. Because if you bridge it, you become more powerful. Because you can talk to people in ways that they understand. They just can't use those words, but they understand. And that way, you move lots of peoples with you, because these words, these ones, or these ones are powerful. They're values. They're setting direction for us. More people can understand it, as opposed to saying, an ant met a grasshopper, and everybody is looking at you and thinking, so what? And you say, it's not about an ant, it's not about the grasshopper. Really, it is about the value of being conscientious and planning. Yes, there's time for being carefree, but you also have to have a foresight. Without the foresight, you're just reactive. Right. So I'll finish today. So I hope that I have communicated to you a couple of aspects. The first one I really wanted to communicate is that every text begins with the intention you want to communicate, and then you think of the way you will frame the text in relation to problem, and the problem is an interruption of the focus. So there's a focus that creates a bit stable, although maybe a little bit scary, but still stable sort of beginning. And then there's an interruption which presents the problem, right? And then we have perspectives on the problem. Then we say what happened. Then we have a resolution. And then we drag the reader to the moral where we wanted the reader to be in the first place. So we begin with the moral in our mind, and then we create this emotional sequence. And we choose words by having in mind the emotion we want those texts, those sentences to evoke in the reader. Because at the end of the day, that's what the text is. It's an emotional manipulation of the reader, so that the reader can solve the problem and we can get him where we want the reader to be. We want the reader, like for example, in case of the grasshopper, we want the reader or my child to understand the value of work. Right, in a nice, funny way, but we have communicated the value. Right, so that's basically what I wanted to do. So communications help us to detect the sequence of the text very nicely by seeing the breaks in emotion. One was here about a little bit of attention we had with the grasshopper because we had a field, but the field was clarified. Okay, it's all summer, it's all beautiful. Then we had a break, then we had clarification, then we had understanding that work has to be done, and then we had empathy for the grasshopper. Yeah, such is life, right? So emotions help us to actually follow the follow the sequence of the text in a more critical way, understand what words are doing in the sequence rather than taking it for granted. We now see why there was the word, such like the field or summer or any other word for that matter in this text. All of them are here for a purpose, and some of those purposes I actually underlined, like here, every day, right? So the torture was lasting. It wasn't just one day, it just went on and on and on, just for you as a reader to feel how stupid it is not to work, because you're not going to die on day 1, you're going to die on day 14. It's not that easy to die. People think, I'll just pop off and I'll just die. No, it's not that easy. The human body or insect's body is quite resilient. It just takes forever. So all these things are there on purpose. So basically, the importance of emotion in working with text. We can now drill into text in 3,000 different ways, but I think that emotions in this little introduction have a structuring value or role to play. Anything else did I say? So that's the structure of texts. Obviously, text will vary in structure, so we will deal with it in our meeting 3, or I don't know in what meeting. So I hope that some things were clearer to you today, and especially what text is, right? So you never think of text in an innocent way, right? And when you word things, and you notice this, that even though you were a very good user of text, now when you open your mouth, whether to your husband, to your child, or to your superior, you will know what you're doing. You will know that you don't want to insult them. You will know you want to dissolve the problem somehow. So instead of arguing, you will say, but I love you. And you know what you're doing, right? On purpose, you want to pacify the situation, remind the bastard that you actually married them and that you love them. And then you can argue about the milk or whatever, irrelevant, right? So this is the transformative aspect, right? So emotions help us to structure text, but they also help us to say who we are and how we act and why we do what we do, and whether we can actually make better choices. So I think that's a little introduction for as much as I could actually glue together for the day. I'm not perfect. It is as it is. And I think I achieved something.
Right,
All right,
thank
my
you very much.
friends. I'm happy now for questions or whatever you wish. Lala, continue.
We cannot hear you, Anya. Could you please share the link of our talk today, Anya?
Yes, I
Later.
will.
All right.
I should probably edit this because I'm not a good person. I probably made a lot of used bad words or something. I can't. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
All right. No more questions, everybody? I think we've been here for 2 hours.
Maybe I have one questions, maybe Pak Lala for Anya.
So,
Yeah. Thank you, Anya. You give me something to think and something to do because, I teach reading and also writing class. So, maybe this is my questions, Anya. So, in your perspective, do you think a text can evoke emotions, can deliver the values to the readers, to the audience, when there are many grammatical errors, Anya. Do you think it can evokes emotions as beautiful or as it is intended as when there is no or maybe only a minor grammatical errors? This is my question.
Yeah, so I think as follows. I'm not saying not to teach grammar. I will show you that there are ways of doing that. Okay. Rather than replace language teaching as communication with language teaching. So I'm saying is you can teach language as communication or you can teach language as grammar and linguistics. I think that grammar and linguistics should serve communication, not the other way around. I also think that now with ChatGPT, you've got an enormous advantage because you can really go for language as communication mixed with the emotions, right? And then you can analyze why did ChatGPT use those grammar structures. Then you can think what grammar structures these are, and then you can identify some drills for your students to do to practice those grammatical structures. So you start with the answer and then you analyze the means, as opposed to starting with the means, like past tense or future tense, and hope that one day they will produce a text. They will never produce a text.
no.
You cannot start with 1, 2, 3. It has to be the answer. The answer is particular. So these texts of of teachers from Cambodia, I showed you, they had a pretty good grammar. The only thing that they did wrong, mainly, was they write as they speak. So they do not insert final consonants. So instead of writing 2 trees, they write 2 tree.
Yeah.
Now I kill all my Asian students over that particular issue. And I said, just think. Not only, but sometimes it does matter. Right? It does matter. So, and also I have to correct it myself in the thesis. Instead of thinking about the thesis, I keep writing essays everywhere. Drives me nuts. So, but other than that, look, I've been here for 40 years and ask any native speaker. I make a lot of grammar errors. A lot. It doesn't stop me from writing articles. It doesn't stop me from editing a book. It doesn't stop me from being a lecturer. And now with ChatGPT, I take my badly produced words, I put it through ChatGPT, and I check only whether the translation by ChatGPT is still communicating my message. But I'm using, so when you will look at the article that Lala has, all paragraphs were written by ChatGPT, every one of them. Now I wrote them. ChatGPT edited them to make them concise, to give them meaning, fast meaning, not Like, sometimes we as second language speakers, we write very detailed, like the tree of the monkey on top of the turtle, blah blah blah. ChatGPT says landscape. That's what I meant. Right? So that interaction in the long run has a good pedagogic impact on everybody, because I will learn. As a result, my language improves because I have a perfect editor. So yes, so you start with the answer from ChatGPT, then you look at the structures that ChatGPT used, then we looked at the grammar drills, all of them. We're not doing this that year 1 present tense, year 2 past tense. By the time you hit present participle in year 3, nobody bothers anymore. They've been using present tense for 2 years, so they will never ever learn present participle, right? You have to start all tenses in year 1, so that kids are learning differences by contrasting when, what tense,
Yeah.
not present tense in year 1. Because if they use present tense in year 1 and in year 2, in year 3, they already are efficient. And they no longer have a need for past. Past participle. Bother about that. Right? So that's what I'm suggesting. I've got links to drills. I can send it to Lala. I've got links to drills where you can identify freely available from Australia drills on every bloody construct in English grammar. But you start with the answer and then drill down to the drills, and kids can practice and see how things change and all of that. Not starting with the drill. Because communication is what you want, not the grammar. Grammar will come or will not come, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
I mean, Lala,
Thank you.
You're an excellent student. When you came, you already spoke English better than anyone else, any other of my students. But it doesn't mean that any other of my international students didn't finish PhD.
Yeah, they did.
They did. They gave presentations, whatever. It's fine. Even it's just and everything in due course. So when you're 30, your English will be whatever, but when you're 40, it will be better. When you're 50, it will be better. I mean, you can't learn English. You can learn English enough to buy ice cream within the first week or 2. But if you want to write articles, it's going to take you 10 years. And that's how it is. And we need to understand it rather than require from our students to be bloody geniuses after 2 semesters.
Yeah. So we hope to see you again next week, Anya, or we will put this in our podcast. What do you think?
You decide. We'll think about it, but I'll send you the link. Because the thing is, because it's not, I was very free and I was making fun, so I'm not sure how much of that I can keep for public use. Do you see what I'm saying? I was making a lot of fun in a well-meaning way, because sometimes you have to make fun to make to communicate the point across. That's how it is. All right, no problem. So nice to see you all, meet you all again, or whatever. Some of you I've seen, some of you I haven't. So thank you so much. I hope it was still a usable venue. Did you think that this StreamYard was better than Zoom?
Yes, much even better. We love it.
Oh, good. Yeah, I'm not a Zoom.
This is my first time to use Stream.
Yeah.
It's my first time. And I think it's better.
Yeah, well, I pay $500 American a year for that from my own money.
Very expensive for us. Thank you very much, Anya. Thank you, everyone, for coming here.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anya.